Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Promise Perspective podcast. Welcome back to our series on covenant in season 5. We are going to spend some time today going back to the Garden of Eden. We're going to trace covenant through the Bible from the very beginning, and we're going to go all the way to the time of Noah and the flood. So we will start this in this episode, and we will move to other covenants as we continue on and progress through studying scripture. And when we trace this through scripture on the topic of covenant, we see continuity rather than replacement. A key to understanding covenant in general is that the covenants in scripture are not disconnected. They are distinct, but they are still connected. They are part of a single unfolding story showing Yah's plan to restore humanity through obedience, faithfulness, and relationship. So let's walk through that briefly because it's important to recognize that there are different covenants in Scripture. However, I want to point out that modern thinking, and when I say modern, I actually mean unbiblical thinking, it presents and teaches a dichotomy between the Old versus New Testament, as if they are two disconnected systems, treated as if law and grace are in opposition to one another, as if physical Israel is either replaced or sidelined. Torah is seen as obsolete, and our Messiah is viewed as starting something entirely new. And this framework turns our Messiah into a reformer of Yah's plan rather than the fulfillment of Yah's plan. And that's why there is such a big disconnect from scripture here, because this framework is the foundation of what the majority of Christianity rests its beliefs and doctrine on. And there are many issues with this. I know that it is so hard for people to fathom that Christianity can actually get things wrong. It can be hard to fathom that, as a religion that claims to be based on the Hebrew faith, it's hard to fathom how much Christianity has actually gone astray from the Hebraic and scriptural foundation. But it's a reality that we have to deal with. And as I've said before, the gospel is so much bigger than what we've been taught. Biblical covenant thinking, the Hebraic framework, treats the Bible as one continuous story. Israel remains central to the story. Covenants build off one another, not replace one another. And the Most High doesn't change his standards because obedience has always been meant to flow through covenant relationship. The law, the Torah, is spiritual, as Paul says. But that's a whole other topic for another day. Now, a lot of people only understand scripture and the Bible as a whole as having an old covenant and a new covenant or renewed covenant. This is actually something that requires us to get a little technical with, but if we only lump our understanding of covenant as something old versus new, we won't be able to see and understand the entire story of redemption and the gospel of our Messiah. And this is why what started out as one episode has turned into 9 episodes. This is exactly why I wanted to take the time to go through scripture and follow this covenant thread throughout the Bible. Because covenant is a foundational word, and understanding that is important to studying the Bible. So I want to take my time with that and break this down as simply and cohesively as possible. So let's take some time to go through these different covenants in scripture. And we are going to start with Eden. So the covenant in Eden I titled this section The Pattern of Dominion, Obedience, and Access. So you have the covenant made in Eden. Some people call it the Edenic covenant. Now, these terms are not found in scripture. These are just terms that are used to label these covenants to help clarify and explain. They're really just for teaching purposes. Also, to be clear, the word covenant is not used here in this story. It's not used in Genesis chapters 1 through 3. Wanted to make that clear also. But we all know what happened. Yah said, don't do this. And Eve did it. And then Adam subsequently did the same. So, but when we talk about the Edenic covenant, we're just using theological language to describe something that scripture presents like as a narrative rather than formally. But within Genesis 1 through 3, the covenant structure is clearly there. It's clearly present. So in Eden, we see all the elements of covenant. We see Yahuwah establishing relationship. We see a human representative, Adam, which means mankind, clear instruction, blessings for obedience, and consequences for disobedience. This is covenant framework. Yahuwah creates man in his image, Genesis 1, verse 26 through 31, breathes life into him, Genesis 2, verse 7, and gives him dominion, gives mankind dominion. Did you know that the word man in Hebrew is Adam? Adam means man or mankind. It isn't technically a name. Yahusha is called the last Adam in 1 Corinthians 15. It says in 1 Corinthians 15, verses 45 through 47, and so it is written, the first man, Adam, became a living being. The last Adam became a life-giving spirit. However, the spiritual is not first, but the natural, and afterward the spiritual. The first man was of the earth, made of dust. The second man is the master from heaven. So Paul, in these verses, calls Yahusha the last Adam. That language is deliberate and intentional. Adam represents the first covenant head of humanity. Messiah represents the second. The first Adam was formed from the dust. The last Adam came from heaven. The first Adam failed through disobedience. The last Adam overcame through obedience. The first Adam brought death. The last Adam brings resurrection life. This is not replacement, it's restoration. Yahusha in the flesh had to come in the flesh to reclaim and restore righteous dominion through obedience, where the first man, who was earthly, failed. Dominion and righteousness will finally be restored when he returns. And that's why the authors are making a connection here. The fall of mankind happened in the Garden of Eden. It says in Genesis 3, verses 22 through 24. It says, then Yahuwah Elohim said, behold, the man has become like one of us, to know good and evil. And now, lest he put out his hand and take also of the tree of life and eat and live forever. Therefore, Yahuwah Elohim sent him out of the Garden of Eden to till the ground from which he was taken. So he drove out the man, and he placed cherubim at the east of the Garden of Eden, and a flaming sword which turned every way to guard the way to the tree of life. Mankind lost access to the garden. Yahuwah had to guard it now. And what was guarded in Eden, the tree of life, reappears at the end of the story in Revelation 22, verse 14, where access is restored to those who walk in covenant obedience. Revelation 22, verse 14 says, blessed are those who do his commandments, that they may have the right to the tree of life and may enter through the gates into the city. So the Bible begins with a garden and it ends with a restored city garden. It begins with exile and ends with return. It begins with failed dominion and ends with restored dominion through Messiah. It ends with Messiah reigning and restoring and his people reigning with him. That's why it should catch our attention when in just 2 chapters before that, we read that the first resurrection is reserved for those who will reign with him as priests. So this is why the promise is not about escaping earth forever. This is why we have to understand that we aren't going up to heaven for eternity. It says in Revelation that the first resurrection is reserved for Messiah's priests who will reign with him when he returns. We, by his blood, have the opportunity to get to inherit what he came to restore. It's not about a rapture and going up to heaven to dwell forever. It's about restored creation and new heaven and earth in which the heavenly Jerusalem is coming down to earth for those who are found worthy, who will inherit it. As Messiah teaches in Matthew 5, verse 5, the meek shall inherit the earth. That is Eden language. That's restoration language. And as we will discuss in within the next 2 episodes, that word inheritance is Abrahamic language. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. So what was lost in Eden is restored in Messiah. So this is just one of many examples and ways that we connect the beginning to the end. 1 Corinthians 15 verses 21 and 22 says, "For since by man came death, by man also came the resurrection of the dead. For as in Adam all die, even so in Messiah all shall be made alive." So when we talk about covenant, we can't skip Eden. It's the foundation. It establishes the categories of obedience, exile, access, which is AKA priesthood, dominion, and restoration that echo through Noah, Abraham, Moses, David, and culminate in Messiah. It's just such a beautiful, it's a beautiful truth that just deserves more of our attention, because everything in scripture is very intentional. And I truly believe that we're going to be spending the rest of our lives learning just more and more about how intentional it really is. I can guarantee you that, I don't know, however much time from now, this is already really deep, understanding how the Garden of Eden in Genesis connects to the restored city and restored access to the tree of life in Revelation. I mean, that's deep enough right now, but I can assure you, if we keep studying that, I bet it gets even deeper, So let's look at another covenant that many of us, we actually become pretty familiar with this at a very young age. It's one of the greatest examples of Yah's faithfulness and mercy, and that is the covenant with Noah and all flesh. In Genesis 9, chapter 9, verses 12 through 13, and I'm going to add verse 17, it says, "And Elohim said, 'This is the sign of the covenant which I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you for perpetual generations. I set my bow in the cloud, and it shall be for the sign of the covenant between me and the earth.' And Elohim said to Noah, 'This is the sign of the covenant which I have established between me and all flesh that is on the earth.'" So Noah and all of mankind, including us today, every time you see a rainbow in the sky, let it be a reminder that Yah does not break his promises. He put that in the sky as a sign and promise that he will never again flood the earth. You can read all of Genesis chapter 9 for context. So that's a covenant. This is also an unconditional covenant. What this means is that there are no terms and conditions on our part to agree to. This is an unconditional covenant with a promise that the Father made to, quote unquote, every living creature of all flesh. So he made it to us and the animals. We don't have to do anything to keep this covenant. It just is. The Father says, I'm putting my bow in the clouds, and this represents my promise to you. Period. Even when we fail, he still doesn't abandon his creation. In essence, the covenant with Noah is a daily reminder that God's promises are trustworthy. His word is sure, and his mercy extends far beyond what we could imagine. I mean, think about it. For me, I don't remember if I've talked about this on my podcast or not, but I have literally have an obsession with the sky. It's that childlike faith. Every time you look in the sky and you see a cloud, or the way that the sun like paints the clouds, or the shape of the clouds, or the sun rising, and every time you see a rainbow in the cloud, he put that there. Like, that's his doing. He is the one that commands all of his creation. He does that. And when you look and I just encourage you to take more time to look at the sky. Look at how he paints things. It's just so beautiful. The fact that he put a big old rainbow in the sky is just, this picture I have on the slide is actually a picture I took at my parents' house. I mean, how can you not? Every time I look at a rainbow, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's a rainbow. And this picture on the this picture on the screen is a double rainbow. I know you all have seen that video where the guy is recording the rainbow and he's like, oh my gosh, it's a double rainbow. Wow. Oh my goodness, that's how I feel too. A double rainbow. Okay, anyway. But yeah, and the other thing too, the reason that rainbows are so fascinating to me is not because it's just pretty colors, but I feel like it gives us a glimpse of the throne room too. Revelation 4 verse 3, it says, and he who sat there was like a jasper and a sardius stone in appearance. And there was a rainbow around the throne, in appearance like an emerald. Can you even imagine? How cool is that? He is literally put his rainbow in the sky. And when you see a rainbow, that is a part of his throne. Come on. Come on now. Are you serious? Are you serious? He is literally, so the rainbow is not just a sign of his promise and his covenant. It is a glimpse of what his throne looks like. I can't even fathom it. In real time, with our own two eyes, we get to see a piece of heaven, of his throne room. How could that not excite you? So cool. So anyway, after I totally geeked out over this podcast, as we close today, I just want you to remember Yah's covenants are a continuous story. So we see, like I just said, with Eden, from Genesis to Revelation, there's a connection. We have the Garden of Eden, lost access. And then we have Revelation, restored access to the tree of life that was in the garden. And with Noah, we see a sign of the Most High's promise in Genesis. And then in Revelation, We see that it is going to be part of it. It is, and we will eventually see that one day. There's a rainbow around his throne. Like, so from Genesis to Revelation, that promise stands. It is secure. And it's a glimpse into the throne room. So again, these covenants are a continuous story. They're not nothing is disconnected. From Eden to Noah, we see his faithfulness, his mercy, and his plan to restore what was lost. And we are just getting started. Next time, we will continue tracing covenant and promise through scripture by looking at the covenant with David, a promise that points forward to Messiah and the eternal kingdom. So I encourage you, stay with me because it only gets deeper from here. So with that being said, I look forward to being with you all next time, y'all willing, and may Yahuwah bless you in your studies, and I'll catch y'all next time.